Have you ever heard the phrase, women are impossible to understand? It's something tossed around in conversations, on podcasts, even in locker rooms. But here's the truth. It's not that women are impossible to understand. It's that most men are listening with the wrong ears and looking through the wrong lens. You see, women aren't puzzles to be solved. They are not inconsistent or irrational or too emotional. Women are emotionally intelligent, deeply intuitive, and wired to respond not just to words, but to presence, energy, and inner strength. And that's where most men miss the mark. They're taught to lead with logic, to argue, explain, prove, persuade. But the things that move a woman, what draws her in, what earns her trust, aren't logical at all. They're emotional, energetic, subtle, often subconscious. Now, before we go any further, let me be absolutely clear. This is not about manipulation. This is not about hacks, pickup tactics, or playing mind games. This is about emotional literacy, about seeing what's been hidden in plain sight and becoming the kind of man who naturally evokes connection, trust, and desire. Not because he's pretending, but because he's grounded in himself. The Stoics taught us that to master the world, we must first master ourselves. That includes our emotions, our impulses, and our ability to listen, not just with our ears, but with our full attention. So when we talk about understanding women, we're not looking for tricks. We're learning to attune ourselves, to show up differently, to move from reactivity to presence, from confusion to clarity, from needing her approval to offering solid ground. Because here's something most men have never been taught. There are emotional pressure points that trigger deep responses in women, not because they're weak, but because they're human. These are not flaws, they're openings. And when approached from a place of presence, maturity, and inner calm, these weaknesses become bridges, gateways to intimacy, loyalty, and even healing. That's what this video is about. Over the next few minutes, we'll walk through 9 powerful emotional truths, what some might call female weaknesses, but we'll reframe them as emotional entry points. Because the truth is, behind every emotional reaction is a core need, a vulnerability, a desire to feel seen, safe, and understood. These 9 insights are not just psychology. They're practical wisdom for any man who wants to stop feeling powerless and start showing up with intention. And here's why this matters. In a world where relationships are breaking faster than ever, where communication feels like a battlefield, where good men feel invisible and good women feel misunderstood, this knowledge is more than useful. It's essential. We live in a time where most people are talking past each other. But what if you could become the exception? What if you could understand not just what she says, but what she truly means beneath the surface? What if you could speak directly to her emotional core, without trying to fix her, change her, or impress her? That's the art of presence. That's the strength of emotional clarity. And that's what we're about to explore. So if you've ever found yourself frustrated asking, why does she pull away when things feel good? Why does she test me when I've done nothing wrong? Why does she say she's fine, but I can feel something's off? Then stay with me. Because the answers are here, not in the form of a quick fix, but in a deeper understanding of how women respond to energy, safety, and truth. Remember what Marcus Aurelius said? When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. Love, like life, is a privilege. And when we show up with respect, awareness, and strength, we don't just understand women better, we elevate the whole relationship. So let's begin. Let's uncover the 10 emotional triggers that, when met with presence and integrity, open the door to connection, passion, and trust. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being real, rooted, unshakable, ready. Let's dive in. Part 1. Masculine traits that penetrate her emotional armor. Let's start with something that most men get completely wrong. Confidence. Not the loud, in-your-face kind. Not the guy who takes up the whole room just to prove he exists. Not the one who brags, interrupts, dominates, hoping to be seen as alpha. No. The kind of confidence that truly captivates a woman, the kind that penetrates through her emotional armor, is quiet. It's grounded, solid, calm. Unshaken. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need permission to exist. And most importantly, it doesn't seek approval. You see, a woman's emotional system is far more attuned than we realize. She doesn't just hear what you say. She feels who you are. She can sense whether your smile is real or forced, whether your silence is power or insecurity, whether you're truly leading or just performing strength because you're afraid of being seen as weak. And the moment she senses that you don't trust yourself, she won't trust you either. This is why grounded, presence-based confidence is so rare and so powerful. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how the most magnetic men are often the quietest ones in the room? They're not showing off. They're not chasing. They're simply being. They're rooted in who they are. And that stillness speaks louder than any boastful words ever could. Women pick up on that. Why? Because that kind of presence feels safe. It feels steady. It feels like leadership. And in a world full of noise and distraction, that kind of energy becomes unforgettable. Now here's the Stoic lens to add to this. Marcus Aurelius said, "The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable." A man who constantly second-guesses himself, who waits for outside validation, who molds his actions around what she thinks or might think, is not free. A free man, a truly masculine man, is internally anchored. He moves not because he's trying to impress, but because he knows what matters. He doesn't speak to prove he's right. He speaks when it's needed. And when he walks into a room, it's not to be noticed. It's because he has purpose. And that is what captures a woman's deeper attention. That is what melts her defenses, not through charm, but through presence. Because here's the thing, a woman's emotional armor doesn't come from pride. It comes from protection. She's been let down, lied to, overwhelmed by men who take too much and offer too little. So her nervous system is trained to scan. Is this man safe? Is he steady? Is he trying to control me? Or does he command himself? And when she meets a man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't chase, who doesn't get thrown off by her moods, her tests, or her silence, she begins to feel something she rarely feels. Trust. That's the secret. Because when you stop trying to earn her attention and instead embody the kind of presence that commands it, she doesn't just notice you. She remembers you. You live in her mind. You occupy emotional space without saying a word. And you know what's wild? The less you seek her approval, the more she starts to seek your energy. Not because you're withholding it, but because you're not offering it out of desperation. You're offering it from overflow, from choice, from a place of strength. That's when desire gets triggered, not on the surface, but deep in the emotional core. So what does this look like in practice? It looks like not over-explaining when she questions you, holding eye contact without flinching, even in conflict, speaking less but meaning more, saying no calmly, without fear of losing her. Being still, even when she's emotional, because your nervous system doesn't mirror chaos. It's not easy, but it's powerful. And here's the most important part. This isn't about trying to impress her. It's about becoming someone you respect. Because when you do that, when you stop performing and start embodying, she feels it. So don't fake confidence. Cultivate it. Don't pretend to be grounded. Train your mind, your emotions, your breath, your reactions, until you actually are. Because when you're rooted in who you are, without needing permission or applause, that's when her armor drops. Not because you pushed through it, but because you gave her something rare. A man she doesn't have to protect herself from. And that's the first step to building something real. Part 2. Being understood without needing to explain. Let me tell you something that very few men understand. But once you do, it will change everything about how you connect with women. She doesn't always want to explain how she feels. In fact, sometimes she can't. Not because she's hiding something, not because she's trying to play games, but because emotions, real emotions, don't always come in neat, logical sentences. And yet, this is where most men get it wrong. The moment she's upset, confused, or quiet, he goes into problem-solving mode. Just tell me what's wrong. What did I do? Let's talk about it now. Can we fix this already? It sounds reasonable, but it makes her feel unseen. And worse, it makes her feel unsafe emotionally. You see, women are not just seeking a solution. They're seeking attunement, that felt sense that you are with her, not trying to fix her. And that's where true emotional presence comes in. Here's the deeper truth. One of a woman's deepest emotional soft spots is the experience of being understood without needing to explain. To have her emotions sensed, held, and respected, without interrogation or pressure. Let me say it this way. When a woman feels felt, when she realizes she doesn't have to translate her pain into logic for you to get it, that's when her walls begin to fall. That's when she feels safe. That's when she feels close. That's when she feels like she's with a man who sees her soul, not just her behavior. Now think about this. How often have you tried to talk her out of her feelings? You mean well. You want to help. But what if your constant need to explain, to make it better, to dissect what went wrong, was actually doing the opposite? What if what she needs most is your stillness? Not silence from shutdown, but silence from wisdom. Not whatever, but I'm here. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, "Talk to me when you're ready. I'm not going anywhere." That phrase, said calmly without resentment, is emotional oxygen to her nervous system, because it tells her, you're not afraid of her emotions. You're not pressuring her to perform or behave. You're not trying to win. You're trying to understand, and that changes everything. It's important to remember, women aren't tired of men. They're tired of feeling misunderstood by men. They're tired of having to explain every nuance of their emotion just to be taken seriously. Tired of having to justify tears. Tired of being told, you're overreacting, when all they wanted was to be held, physically or emotionally. The Stoics teach us to master ourselves, not other people. To practice stillness, even when emotions rise like storms around us. So when a woman is emotionally flooded, the question is not, how do I fix her? The question is, can I stay steady in her storm? Because that is masculine strength, not dominance. Not control, not logic, but the ability to stay open, calm, and unshaken, especially when she can't. That's the kind of man she remembers. And here's something powerful. When a woman realizes she doesn't have to explain herself to be accepted, she stops fighting for space. She relaxes. She softens. She opens up in ways most men never get to see, because most men never create that safety. So next time she pulls away emotionally, next time she gets quiet or withdrawn, resist the urge to fix. Don't ask 10 questions. Don't try to logic her into a better mood. Instead, breathe. Be still and say, gently but firmly, "I'm here when you're ready." And then stay. Not to punish her with distance, but to show her something rare. A man who doesn't run when she's complicated. A man who can feel the undercurrent beneath her words. A man who doesn't need explanations to love with clarity. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's what Stoic masculinity looks like in a relationship. And make no mistake, this kind of presence, it's unforgettable. Because most men chase emotional clarity through control. But the truly grounded man, he earns emotional intimacy through patience. So the next time you're tempted to say, "Just tell me what's wrong," pause and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can offer is your non-reactive presence. That's when she feels understood, even if she says nothing at all. Part 3. Masculine silence in the right moments. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood tools in a man's emotional arsenal. Silence. Now, I'm not talking about the cold, passive-aggressive silence that punishes or avoids. I'm talking about intentional silence, used wisely, like a sword in the hands of a master. Because here's the truth. In a world obsessed with noise, the man who knows when to be silent becomes magnetic. Let me explain. There will be moments in your relationship or in your daily life when chaos strikes. Emotions flare. Voices rise. Words get sharp. And the average man, he reacts. He defends. He tries to fix, explain, argue, or retreat in frustration. But the Stoic man, the grounded man, he does something very different. He pauses. He stays still. He holds the line, not with force, but with presence. His silence doesn't say, "I'm avoiding you." It says, "I am here, and I will not be moved by the storm." This kind of silence is not weakness. It's strength, refined. It's leadership. You see, when a man remains composed in emotionally charged moments, he becomes the grounding force in the room. Not because he's better than anyone else, but because he's mastered the hardest person to master, himself. And that is deeply attractive. To a woman, to a family, to a team. Your ability to hold your center when emotions swirl around you tells the world, "I am not ruled by chaos. I am ruled by clarity." Now let's look at this through the Stoic lens. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you're confronted with tension, criticism, or even someone else's emotional outburst, what do you choose to do? Most men fall into two extremes. They either explode or withdraw. They argue or disappear. But what if the strongest move wasn't either? What if the strongest move was silence? Not as a wall, but as a signal of groundedness. Because here's what most people don't realize. Silence is communication. And in the right moment, it says things that words never could. It says, "I hear you. I'm not here to fight you. I trust myself enough not to react. You're safe to express yourself, but I won't be pulled into the chaos." Now, don't get me wrong. Silence can be dangerous if it's used to avoid responsibility or shut someone out. But when used from a place of awareness and calm, It becomes one of the most powerful emotional tools a man can wield. Think about it. How do great leaders respond in crisis? They don't shout. They don't panic. They pause. They assess. And only when they've grounded themselves do they speak. That's what makes their words carry weight, and it's the same in your personal life. When you practice emotional restraint, not as a strategy to manipulate, but as a reflection of your inner discipline, you radiate trust. Because people feel when you're not easily shaken, and women especially are attuned to this. They notice when your silence comes from power, not pettiness. When your stillness says, "I'm listening, even if I'm not speaking." It's ironic, isn't it? The world tells men to speak up, be expressive, share your feelings, and there is a time for that. But what it often fails to teach is this: wisdom is knowing when to speak and when not to. There's a kind of mystery in the man who doesn't rush to fill every silence. He's not avoiding the moment. He's commanding it. He's not afraid of discomfort. He's walking through it with grace. And in doing so, he creates space for others to settle, for her to feel safe, for tension to dissolve, for clarity to emerge. So next time you're in a heated moment, or she's venting emotion that makes no sense to your logical mind, pause. Don't rush to respond. Don't try to fix. Don't walk away either. Just be there. Breathe. Let your silence speak of strength. You'd be surprised how often the right silence leads to the right words, once the emotional dust settles. This is the art of emotional leadership, and it begins not with what you say, but with what you can withhold. A calm man in a chaotic moment doesn't need to say much. His energy says it all, and when your silence becomes a mirror of your self-control, you stop being just a man in the room. You become a presence. Part 4. Deep, unflinching eye contact. Let's talk about something simple, but undeniably powerful. Eye contact. Now, I don't mean glancing at her and quickly looking away. I don't mean staring with intensity to try to dominate or seduce. I mean calm, steady, grounded eye contact. The kind that speaks louder than words ever could. Because here's the truth, most men don't realize. Women read microsignals. They notice the flicker in your eyes, the way you hesitate when she holds your gaze, the tension in your jaw, the subtle shift when you're trying to hide something, or trying too hard to impress. To the trained feminine nervous system, a man who flinches even slightly during eye contact is not fully present. And presence is everything. You see, unwavering eye contact isn't about intimidation. It's about intimacy. It's about standing your ground, not physically but emotionally. It's saying, without saying a word, "I am here. I am not afraid. I see you." And that's rare. In a world where everyone's constantly distracted, looking at phones, screens, or their own thoughts, genuine eye contact has become sacred. It's almost rebellious. But it's also revealing, because the way you look at her tells her everything about how you see yourself. If your eyes dart away quickly, it signals doubt. If you scan the room while she speaks, it signals disinterest. If you only look when you want something, it signals manipulation. But when you hold her gaze, calmly, softly, without flinching or needing, it signals power. Not the kind of power that overpowers, the kind of power that holds, that contains, that makes her feel safe in your presence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," and that applies here too, because your eyes reflect what your inner world looks like. If you're anxious, she'll feel it. If you're trying to impress her, she'll sense it. But if you're centered, grounded, and clear, she'll feel that too. So how do you cultivate this? It starts with your breath. Before you can hold someone else's gaze, you need to be able to hold your own center. You need to be able to sit in the discomfort of vulnerability. Because real eye contact isn't just about seeing her, it's about being seen. And for many men, that's terrifying. We've been conditioned to mask our truth, to look away when things get emotionally intense, to hide behind logic, jokes, or performance. But true strength is revealed in stillness, in presence, in the man who can hold a gaze, not to control, but to connect. And here's the beautiful part. When you can meet a woman's eyes, without rushing, without flinching, without performing, you awaken something in her. Because it's so rare for a woman to be fully seen without being judged, analyzed, or interrupted. Your gaze becomes a mirror. And if you are clear, calm, and trustworthy, she'll see herself more clearly through you. Now, this doesn't mean you need to stare like a statue. It's not a test of who blinks first. It's about staying relaxed and intentional. You look, you listen, you feel. And when the moment comes that she lowers her gaze, not out of fear, but out of emotional resonance, that's when you'll know. You're not just in the room, you're in the connection. Let me ask you something personal. Can you hold eye contact with someone when they're emotional? Can you look into a woman's eyes when she's sad, angry, or deeply vulnerable and not turn away? Can you allow her to feel what she feels without trying to fix it or retreat from it? If so, that's not just confidence. That's emotional leadership, and that's what separates boys from men. Because any guy can talk smooth. Any guy can throw out compliments, show off, or recite a script. But it takes a truly grounded man to simply hold a gaze and let her know, I see you, all of you. And I'm not going anywhere. When you master that, you don't have to try so hard to be interesting. Your energy does the talking. And in a world where so many people feel invisible, where most women are touched but not seen, your presence becomes unforgettable. So practice it. Next time you're in a conversation, slow down. Breathe deeper. Hold her gaze a little longer than you're used to. Let your eyes say what your words often can't. I am present. I am safe. I am with you. Because when you can say that without saying anything, you become a man she can trust, not just today, but over time. Part 5. The need for mysterious depth. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you left a little unsaid, on purpose? Most men believe that being open means saying everything, explaining everything, and laying every card on the table. But in truth, what makes a man captivating is what's not immediately obvious about him. Let me be clear. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's not about creating confusion or being emotionally unavailable. It's about depth. And real depth doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't rush to be known. It allows itself to be discovered, gradually. You see, women are deeply intuitive. They feel energy, rhythm, and intention far more than most men realize. And one thing that awakens their emotional curiosity is a man who doesn't always explain himself, a man who can sit in silence, who doesn't force connection, who doesn't overshare just to fill the space, because mystery isn't about withholding. It's about having enough self-possession to know that not everything needs to be revealed at once. Think of it like this. Imagine walking into a beautiful old library. Dim light. Endless shelves. Dusty pages full of stories yet to be read. That's what emotional depth feels like to a woman. It invites exploration. It stirs curiosity. It makes her want to lean in. But most men, they're more like neon signs, loud, overexposed, explaining their whole life story before she's even asked a question. And while that might feel honest, it leaves nothing for her to uncover. No mystery. No discovery. No depth. Here's the truth most men never hear. A woman doesn't fall in love all at once. She falls, layer by layer. And every time she finds something new in you, a thought, a value, a past experience you didn't force onto the table, it deepens the bond. Mystery is not manipulation. It's restraint. It's knowing that emotional impact doesn't come from how much you say. It comes from how you live. And that kind of mystery, it's magnetic. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." And that's exactly the point. Stop talking about who you are. Live it. Let her see it over time. Let your values show in how you move. Let your vision unfold in how you lead. Let your scars be revealed not for sympathy, but as quiet proof that you've lived and endured. You don't need to force closeness. You need to be grounded enough to let it unfold naturally. And when you do share, when you open up on your own terms, it hits different, because it wasn't taken. It was given. And that kind of sharing builds trust. So what does this actually look like in real life? It looks like speaking when you have something real to say, not just to be liked. Listening more than you talk. Letting her ask questions, instead of answering ones she hasn't. Being comfortable with silence, especially in moments that most people rush to fill. That's when you start to feel like a presence, not just a person. And here's what's powerful. Women pursue what they're curious about. If she feels like she knows everything about you after one dinner, she'll respect you, maybe even like you, but she won't be pulled toward you. But if you give her just enough to feel safe, and just little enough to stir wonder, she'll lean in again and again, not because you're withholding, but because you're not performing, because you're secure enough to let the connection evolve naturally, without pushing, without chasing, without explaining your every move. This is what Stoic mystery looks like in practice. It's not aloofness. It's not being unavailable. It's being self-contained, complete, present, powerful in your own skin. And that energy, it's irresistible, because it gives her something to feel, not just facts to analyze. So the next time you're tempted to overshare, to prove your depth by explaining your pain, your dreams, your everything, pause. Let your life speak for itself. Let your silence invite her curiosity. Let your presence suggest there's more beneath the surface, because there is. You are not a product to be sold. You are a man to be discovered. And the more secure you are in your own mystery, the more she'll want to find out what's behind your eyes, what drives you, what haunts you, what moves you. That's how real emotional connection begins. Not with noise, but with quiet, intentional depth. Part 6. Her soft spot for a man with purpose, not just passion. There's something magnetic about a man on fire. Passion lights him up. It gives him energy, charisma, intensity. It makes people look his way and feel drawn to whatever he's chasing. But here's the thing. Passion alone fades. It burns bright, but without direction, it burns out just as fast. And women, they're not just attracted to passion. They're pulled deeply towards something else. Purpose. Let me say it simply. Passion excites her, but purpose makes her feel safe. There's a difference between a man who's excited about life today and a man who's anchored by something deeper, something enduring, something that gives his life meaning. Purpose is what steadies a man. Purpose is what keeps him calm when life gets chaotic. Purpose is what tells her, this man is not just wandering. He knows where he's going. You see, in relationships, emotional attraction isn't just about chemistry. It's about trust. And trust comes when she sees that you're guided by something larger than comfort or convenience. A man with purpose doesn't chase fleeting highs. He's not driven by external approval. He doesn't crumble when things get hard. Because his life isn't built on hype, it's built on mission. Now, let's get real. A lot of men confuse passion with purpose. They start a new hustle, pick up a hobby, get obsessed with a goal. But it's all short-lived. The moment it gets hard, they quit. The moment they're not praised, they lose steam. But a man of purpose is different. He wakes up with discipline, not just motivation. He sticks with the hard stuff. He follows through even when no one's watching. And here's what makes that so attractive to a woman. Purpose signals direction. It shows her you're not lost in life, waiting for someone to give you meaning. You've already found it. And because of that, you're not asking her to carry you. You're not leaning on her to validate you. You're inviting her into a life that's already in motion. That's rare. That's powerful. That's what makes her soften, open, and trust you more. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, led in times of war, and still took the time to write reflections on discipline, humility, and legacy. He didn't chase passion, he served purpose. He once said, "Stop talking about what a good man is. Be one." Purpose isn't something you find in a moment of excitement. It's something you build, brick by brick, through habits, vision, and daily choices. So if you're wondering, how do I become that kind of man? Start here. Ask yourself, what do I stand for when no one's looking? What would I wake up early for, even if I got no praise or reward? What kind of impact do I want to leave, not just on women, but on the world? Purpose doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be yours. It might be building a business that changes lives. It might be becoming a better father than the one you had. It might be mastering your craft, or mentoring others, or serving something bigger than yourself. Whatever it is, when you live from that place, she feels it. Your words carry more weight. Your presence feels more stable. Your decisions come from alignment, not impulse. And that changes the dynamic between you and her. Because now, she's not wondering if you'll disappear when things get tough. She's not worried about carrying the emotional weight for both of you. She sees you as a man who's anchored, grounded, trustable, and even more than that. She starts to respect you, not just as a partner, but as a man. You're no longer the man chasing approval. You're the man creating movement. The one who doesn't need her to be the center of his world because he's already centered within himself. That's not distant. That's magnetic. Because paradoxically, the less you need her to give your life meaning, the more she wants to be part of your world. So don't just chase passion. Passion is the spark, but purpose is the engine. And if you want to attract a woman not just emotionally, but spiritually, build your life with intention, live it with courage, and stay the course, especially when no one's clapping. Because when a woman meets a man who doesn't just talk about vision, but lives it, she doesn't just feel desire, she feels safe. And in that safety, attraction deepens, connection lasts, and love becomes something far more enduring than a fleeting spark. Part 7. Her yearning to be led, without being controlled. Let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions about women and leadership in relationships. She doesn't want to be dominated. She doesn't want to be controlled, silenced, or told what to do. But she does want to be led, and yes, there is a difference, a massive one. Because what most women truly crave is not a man who dictates, but a man who demonstrates, not a man who barks commands, but one who leads through self-mastery. You see, emotional leadership isn't about control. It's about clarity. It's about steadiness. It's about being the kind of man who knows where he's going and invites her along without pressure or force. Most men have been taught that leading means being louder, tougher, more decisive, more in charge. But real leadership, especially in a relationship, is quieter than that. It's the man who stays calm when she's overwhelmed. It's the man who listens first and responds with intention, not ego. It's the man who doesn't just take charge, but who takes responsibility. Let's break this down. What does it mean to lead her emotionally? It means that when she feels uncertain, she can trust your stability. It means that when she's emotional, she doesn't feel judged, but held. It means that when she's spinning in her mind, you're the one who brings her back to center, not by fixing her, but by being centered yourself. And that right there is the heart of Stoic leadership. Marcus Aurelius didn't rule Rome by controlling every citizen. He ruled himself, and through that self-control, he influenced an empire. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you lead from that place, something shifts. Because, whether she says it or not, every woman wants to feel safe in your energy. Not because you silence her, but because you can hold her truth without flinching. Because you can steer the emotional ship when the waves hit hard. She doesn't want a tyrant. She wants a man who moves with conviction, without ever needing to crush hers. Let me ask you, can you lead her without needing to overpower her? Can you make decisions while still honoring her input? Can you stay grounded when she's emotional, without shutting down or lashing out? That's emotional leadership. It doesn't show up just when things are smooth. It shows up when things are hard. It's easy to seem strong when the sun is out. But what happens when she's crying, doubting, or pushing your emotional buttons? Do you lead then? Do you create space for her to feel without feeling the need to fix, dominate, or retreat? A woman's nervous system is incredibly tuned. She can feel when your energy says, "You're safe here." And when she feels that, something powerful happens. She relaxes. She stops testing. She starts trusting, not because you forced it, but because you held the space long enough for her to soften. This isn't about playing therapist or being her rock 24/7. It's about being consistent enough that your presence becomes a home base. It's about leading not by control, but by example, by being the first to calm down, the first to apologize if needed, the first to break a toxic pattern, not with drama, but with depth. You're not dragging her along your path. You're walking it so clearly that she wants to follow. And here's the paradox. The less you try to control her, the more she feels drawn to follow your lead. Because true leadership isn't imposed. It's offered. And when it's rooted in integrity, confidence, and purpose, it becomes irresistible. So if you've ever felt her resisting your leadership, ask yourself, am I leading through fear or through example? Am I trying to control her feelings? Or am I regulating my own? Am I making space for her expression or shutting it down? The more you master yourself, the less you'll need to manage her. And when she senses that, when she feels that your center cannot be easily shaken, She won't just follow your direction. She'll begin to trust your vision. That's how you lead her heart, not through rules, not through pressure, but through the quiet confidence of a man who leads himself, daily, consistently, and with depth. Because at the end of the day, she doesn't need you to control her. She needs to know that when her world gets shaky, you won't. And when you lead from that place, she doesn't just follow, she chooses you over and over again. Part 8. Her vulnerability to words that paint new worlds. Here's something most men completely underestimate: the power of words. Not just any words, not the empty compliments, the recycled pickup lines, or the vague affirmations. I'm talking about words that awaken, words that paint new worlds. Because here's the truth. A woman's heart isn't moved by noise. It's moved by language that carries depth, vision, and emotional presence. You see, most men speak to be heard, but very few speak to be felt. And that's where everything changes. Because women, especially emotionally attuned women, are deeply sensitive to how something is said. They pick up on tone, pacing, energy, and authenticity. They feel whether your words are rooted in presence or if they're just clever-sounding fluff. And here's what most men don't know. Words can be doors. They can open up new emotions, new images, new possibilities in her mind and heart. When spoken with intention, your words can paint visions of not just who you are, but where you're going. They can show her not just how you feel, but what you see. And that sparks something inside her. Because women don't just want connection, they want to be emotionally transported. They want to feel inspired, seen, expanded. It's not about being poetic or rehearsed. It's about speaking from presence, not performance. Think about the difference here. Saying, "You look beautiful tonight," is nice. But saying, "There's something in your eyes tonight," like you're carrying a secret only you understand, that hits differently. It invites her inward. It makes her pause. It pulls her into the feeling of being seen. That's what I mean by painting with words. Now let's ground this in Stoic wisdom. The Stoics were not emotionless. They were emotionally disciplined. They didn't suppress feeling, they refined it. And when they spoke, their words carried weight. Not because they were loud, but because they were true. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Let your speech be brief, genuine, and simple." But in that simplicity, there was power. It's the same with you. You don't need to be poetic to be impactful. You need to be present. Because when a man speaks from presence, from a place of clarity and internal stillness, his words cut through the noise of the world. And that creates lasting emotional impressions. Let me ask you, do your words invite her imagination to come alive? Do they make her feel emotionally safe but also curious? Do they offer her a glimpse of your inner world, not by oversharing, but by choosing words that carry intention? If not, start there. Because it's not about what you say, it's about what your words unlock. Women are not moved by perfection. They are moved by feeling. And when your words reflect that you've taken time to know yourself, to reflect, to see life with depth, she feels it. You become unforgettable, not for what you said, but for what you made her feel. So how do you develop this? Practice speaking slowly, not out of laziness, but to let your words land. Say less, but mean more. Avoid cliches. Replace them with truth. Listen first. Let your words respond to the moment, not overwrite it. And here's the key. Speak not to impress her. Speak to invite her. Invite her into a story, a vision. A possibility that she hadn't imagined before she met you. When you speak with depth, she doesn't just hear you, she travels with you. She feels the emotional layers behind the language. She senses the life you've lived, the pain you've processed, the clarity you've earned. This is not about performance, it's about presence. Because presence gives words life. Even a single sentence, when spoken from a grounded man, can echo in a woman's mind for days. She'll replay it. She'll feel it. She'll attach meaning to it, because it touched something real. So speak like a man who knows where he stands. Speak like a man who has earned the right to be heard, not through volume, but through clarity. And if you do, she won't just remember your face or your actions, she'll remember your words. Because they weren't just sounds. They were symbols, doors, experiences. They reached into her imagination, stirred her emotional world, and whispered, "There's more to feel if you're willing to follow." And that's when the real connection begins. Part 9. Her deep respect for a man who can walk away. Let's talk about one of the most powerful and misunderstood forms of masculine strength. The ability to walk away, not out of anger, not to punish, not to play games, but to protect something far more sacred, your self-worth. You see, there's a kind of man that quietly commands respect, not because he's aggressive, not because he's boastful, but because he has one unshakable truth at his core. I do not stay where I am not respected. And when a woman feels that, not just hears it, but feels it in your energy, everything shifts. Because here's the truth. Neediness kills attraction. Clinging kills respect. And no amount of charm, gifts, or effort can compensate for the absence of self-respect. A man who stays when he's consistently disrespected isn't being loyal, he's betraying himself. And women can feel that. They might not say it out loud, but something in them begins to recoil when they sense that a man is afraid to walk away, afraid to lose her, afraid to be alone. That fear doesn't make you more lovable. It makes you replaceable. Because the moment you choose fear over self-respect, you lose the very thing that made you attractive in the first place, your grounded masculine presence. Now, don't get me wrong. A real man doesn't leave at the first sign of conflict. He doesn't run from hard conversations or emotional discomfort, but he knows the line. He knows the difference between being patient and being disrespected, between being committed and being emotionally dependent. And when that line is crossed, repeatedly, carelessly, or with contempt, he doesn't explode. He doesn't plead. He doesn't try to convince her of his worth. He simply walks, not with drama, not with bitterness, with clarity. And that is unforgettable. Because most men don't know how to do this. They either overreact, storming out in anger, or stay too long, shrinking themselves to keep the peace. But the man who can calmly walk away, who does it because he values his peace more than her approval, is in a category of his own. And here's the paradox. The less you need her, the more she respects you. Because when you're willing to walk, not to control her, but to honor yourself, she feels the weight of your presence in a new way. She sees that your time, your energy, your emotional availability, those are privileges, not entitlements. And if she's wise, that realization will snap her back into alignment. But even if it doesn't, you're still free. You're still whole. Because your identity wasn't built on her validation to begin with. Now, let's bring in some Stoic perspective. Epictetus said, "Never depend on the admiration of others. There is no strength in it. Personal merit cannot be derived from an external source. In other words, you were never meant to chase love by losing yourself. You were meant to embody love by knowing who you are and refusing to tolerate anything that dishonors it. So let me ask you, have you ever stayed too long in a relationship that cost you your peace? Have you ever silenced your truth just to keep her happy? Have you ever begged for connection when what you needed was distance? If so, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But it's time to rise above that pattern. Because the man who can walk away when he's being dishonored isn't emotionally cold. He's emotionally sovereign. He doesn't slam the door. He simply closes it with grace. He doesn't say, "You'll regret this." He says, "I love myself too much to stay here." That kind of man doesn't seek revenge. He doesn't need closure. He is the closure. And whether she admits it or not, she respects him because he showed her what real boundaries look like, what dignity looks like, what it means to love without losing yourself. So if you've ever wondered what makes a woman respect you, not just like you, not just desire you, but deeply, instinctively respect you, it's this: the willingness to walk away without drama, when your value is no longer being met with care. Not because you're angry, but because you're clear. And when she sees that, she sees a man who doesn't just know what he wants, but knows who he is. That's rare, that's real, that's powerful. And in a world full of men who chase and chase, be the man who can leave with peace. Because sometimes, the most powerful move isn't to fight harder. It's to walk away, quietly, confidently, and with your head held high. Part 10. Her softness emerges in the space you create. There's a quiet moment in every powerful relationship. A moment where her guard drops, her energy softens, and for the first time, you see the real her. Not the curated version, not the defensive, independent, guarded mask she wears in the world, but the version of her that's fully open, fully expressed, fully at peace. And here's the truth: that version of her only emerges in the space you create. Not the space filled with noise, pressure, or control, but the space of your stillness. Your grounded, calm, non-demanding presence. You see, a woman doesn't soften just because you ask her to. She softens when she feels safe. And emotional safety isn't built with words. It's built with energy. Most men are so busy trying to get something from her, validation, sex, approval, attention, that they unknowingly create tension, pressure, expectation. And when she feels that pressure, her nervous system tightens. Her guard goes up. She stays in her head. She stays on defense. But the moment she feels you're not trying to take from her, the moment she senses that you're simply being with her, calm, present, open, that's when the walls come down. That's when she exhales. That's when her body relaxes. That's when her softness returns, not as a performance, but as her natural state. And here's what most men miss. True masculine energy isn't forceful. It's still. It's grounded. It's like the mountain, steady, immovable, unbothered by the changing winds around it. When you embody that energy, you don't need to chase her emotions. You hold space for them. You don't try to fix her feelings. You allow them to flow. And that stillness becomes the container where her femininity feels free to emerge. She stops protecting. She starts expressing. And that's where real intimacy begins. The Stoics understood this better than most modern men. They didn't define power as domination, but as self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." When you build that inner quiet, when your soul becomes that untroubled retreat, you offer her something she rarely finds in this chaotic world: a place to rest. Because let's be honest, most women are tired of performing, tired of being strong all the time, tired of being misunderstood, rushed, or emotionally neglected. And when she meets a man who sees her not as a challenge to solve, but as a being to understand, when she feels that she can cry, laugh, rage, or simply be silent without judgment, she begins to trust. And from that trust, her softness blooms. It's not weakness, it's not submission, it's her natural state, finally given permission to breathe. But here's the catch. You can't force this. You can't fake calm just to get her to open. She'll feel it. You must become the calm. You must train yourself to hold stillness, not as a tactic, but as a truth. You must learn to breathe through your triggers, to sit in silence without fear, to see her tears not as threats, but as sacred vulnerability. Because the man who can remain grounded in her storm, that man becomes unforgettable. He becomes the man she can finally stop performing for. And the paradox is this: when you stop trying to make her soft, she softens. Because now, she's no longer protecting herself from you. She's opening to you. So how do you create that kind of space? Stop interrupting. Stop rushing to fix. Be fully present when she speaks. Let your energy say, "You don't have to be anything for me. Just be." And most importantly, manage your own emotional storms, so hers don't shake your core. That's what real masculine presence looks like. It's not loud, it's not dominant, it's not emotionally reactive. It's solid, it's warm, it's trustworthy. And when you become that man, her femininity doesn't need to be coaxed or controlled. It flows, not because you took it, but because you earned it. By creating space, by holding presence, by being the one person in her life who doesn't need her to be on. That is what makes a woman truly melt. And that kind of connection, that's where the masks fall. That's where love begins. So here we are. After everything we've explored, the emotional triggers, the unseen dynamics, the quiet strengths, there's one truth that echoes through it all. You were never meant to chase. You were meant to become. Because the kind of woman who is worth your time, your presence, your loyalty, she doesn't respond to the man who pleads, proves, or performs. She responds to the man who is rooted. A man who doesn't move to impress, but who moves with clarity. A man who doesn't need her to validate him, because he's already validated himself. And here's the truth. There are no tricks, no gimmicks, no lines that magically unlock connection. Because attraction, real attraction, doesn't happen when you manipulate someone else's emotions. It happens when you master your own. You want to be the man she trusts? Then start by trusting yourself. You want to be the man she feels safe with? Then become the one who's safe in his own silence. One who doesn't flinch when emotions rise. One who doesn't chase closure or beg for attention. You see, most men are stuck in the loop of performance, trying to be enough for a woman who hasn't even earned a place in their future, trying to keep her interested by doing more, giving more, sacrificing more. But the game changes when you stop asking, "How do I get her to like me?" and start asking, "What kind of man do I need to become so I no longer need to ask that?" That's the shift. That's the power. Because when you lead with presence instead of pressure, when your life has vision, purpose, and direction, when your energy says, "I'm complete, with or without you," she doesn't pull away. She leans in. She doesn't test to provoke. She tests to see if your roots are deep enough to hold her storm. And when you pass those tests, not through reaction, but through restraint, you move from being one of many to becoming the man she can't stop thinking about. Not because you forced anything, but because your very presence made her feel something rare: trust. Now look, I'm not saying this is easy. This kind of transformation doesn't happen overnight. It takes work, it takes honesty. It takes a willingness to look in the mirror and say, where am I still chasing? Where am I still seeking her approval instead of building my own identity? And then, step by step, you shift. You show up differently. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for your standards. You stop offering your energy to people who don't meet your depth. And without even realizing it, the world starts to respond differently. Because when you no longer need attention, you become irresistibly attractive, not just to women, but to opportunity, to clarity, to purpose. You're no longer chasing a feeling. You're living from it. You're no longer trying to be impressive. You're just impeccable. And that's when everything shifts. The Stoics didn't chase applause. They didn't seek to impress the masses. They sought only to master the inner citadel, the place inside you no one can touch. He who is brave is free. Seneca bravery, in this case, means becoming the man who can walk alone, who can lead without needing followers, who can speak from stillness, and who can love without losing himself. That's the man she responds to. That's the man she respects. That's the man she remembers. So let this be your reminder. You don't need to chase love. You don't need to chase approval. You don't need to twist yourself into the version of a man you think she wants. You just need to become the kind of man who doesn't need to chase at all. Because when you do that, she doesn't run. She recognizes. And when she sees a man who is whole, clear, steady, and emotionally free, she doesn't just respond. She chooses. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't let it end here. Like this video, if you're done chasing and ready to start becoming. Subscribe for more content that strengthens your mind, sharpens your focus, and aligns you with the man you were born to be. Drop a comment below. What's the one shift you know you need to make starting today? Your next level begins with one honest answer. And remember, when you become the man who no longer seeks permission to lead, love, or live, you don't chase. You attract. Let's build that kind of man together.